attitudes toward homosexuality. We discovered that Americans consider homosexuality more harmful to society than adultery, abortion, or prostitution. We shall present other results of the survey later in the broadcast, and we shall investigate some of the medical, legal, and social aspects of homosexuality. But first, we shall examine it as a human condition.
Now, I know myself, from my own standpoint, and speaking of other people that I know, that the innermost aspects of a person's personality is his sexual orientation. And I can't imagine myself giving this up, and I don't think most other people who are sure of their sexuality, whether they're homosexuals or heterosexuals, could imagine giving that up either.
Warren Adkins is 28. He graduated from high school in Washington, D.C., went to night school for 3 years, then spent a year drifting around the country. He's back in Washington now, working as a school registrar. For the last 5 years, he's been an active member of the Mattachine Society, a homosexual organization. What do you think caused your sexual orientation? Have you thought about it?
I have thought about it, but it really doesn't concern me very much. I never would imagine if I had blonde hair that I would worry about what genes and what chromosomes caused my blonde hair. Or if I had brown eyes. My homosexuality to me is very much in the same category. I feel no more guilt about my homosexuality or about my sexual orientation than a person with blonde hair or with dark skin or with light skin would feel about what they had.
Did your parents know?
Yes, I told my parents myself when I was 14 years old. I feel in many ways that I've been very lucky to have such a warm and understanding family. They know about my homosexuality. They have accepted me as a person, and this I feel is very important. They don't think of me as some kind of creature. I had one friend who was beaten savagely by his father, and he beat him, in fact, with bricks. I was one of the lucky ones. My family reacted, I think, very heroically and humanely.
Most homosexuals, if they had a chance to be heterosexual, would they?
Well, I have a friend who took a poll of 300 people on that very question. He asked them, if you were able to take a pill to change yourself from a homosexual to a heterosexual, would you do it? And something like 95% of them answered no.
But in that same poll, if I'm not mistaken, the majority said that they would not want, if they had one, a son or a brother to be a homosexual.
That's true. I think some people might not want to wish on others a situation in which society would cause problems for their younger people. And I think that this is probably true of questions where other minorities are involved in the same way. I think that many people, for example, wouldn't want to bring a racially mixed child into a world that scorned him. And I can understand this feeling among many people.
This man is 27, college educated. He was unable to hold a job because of his inability to contain his homosexual inclinations. He's been in jail 3 times for committing homosexual acts. If he is arrested once more, he faces the possibility of life prison. He is now on probation and in psychotherapy.
I had a very domineering mother, tyrant. That's a very sweet tyrant, but a tyrant nonetheless. It was a love that I had that was kind of killing. And I was a fat child, was made fun of by the other children. Mother was going to have her way about how I dressed, how I acted, what I did, what I didn't do. A fairly curious child, but I had to restrain it. And I was afraid of her. I was scared to death of her.
When did you first go into therapy?
As soon as my parents found out, they couldn't understand what they had done to bring about such a turn of events. They were helpful. They saw to it that psychotherapy was made available. That every opportunity to change this was set down for me, but I wasn't receptive to it, and that's unfortunate too. But because I think if I would have felt uncomfortable in any way, I would have gone ahead and done something about it much before now. I felt superior. I felt as though I had license to satisfy every need, every desire, every tension.
And this was just purely sexual adventure, sexual gratification.
Yes. Animal sexual gratification, yes. We don't know what form it might have taken other than this. I use the word sick. I'm not taking a pot shot. I'm not attempting to judge homosexuals. I'm not a judge. I know that inside now I'm sick. I'm not sick just sexually. I'm sick in a lot of ways. Immature, childlike. And the sex part of it is a symptom, like a stomach ache is a symptom of who knows what.
Most Americans are repelled by the mere notion of homosexuality. The CBS News survey shows that 2 out of 3 Americans look upon homosexuals with disgust, discomfort, or fear. 1 out of 10 says hatred. A vast majority believe that homosexuality is an illness. Only 10% say it is a crime. And yet, and here's the paradox, the majority of Americans favor legal punishment, even for homosexual acts performed in private between consenting adults. The homosexual, bitterly aware of his rejection, responds by going underground. They frequent their own clubs and bars and coffee houses where they can act out in the fashion that they want to, where they can escape the disapproving eye of the society that they call straight. No one knows exactly how many homosexuals there are in the United States. There's no reliable way to find out, for most of them are unwilling to acknowledge it. The Kinsey report of 1948 dealt only with white males. It estimated that 1 in 25 is exclusively homosexual throughout his adult life. Other estimates range as high as 1 in 6. The truth lies somewhere in between. And some men venture into homosexual experimentation for a year or two, then revert to heterosexuality. Some are bisexual. They marry, have children, and keep their homosexual contacts on the side. This much is certain. Male homosexuals in America number in the millions, and their number is growing. They are attracted mostly to the anonymity that a big city gives them. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco. The permissiveness and the variety of the city draw them. The average homosexual, if there be such, is promiscuous. He is not interested in nor capable of a lasting relationship like that of a heterosexual marriage. His sex life, his love life, consists of a series of chance encounters at the clubs and bars he inhabits, and even on the streets of the city. The one-night stand, these are characteristic of the homosexual relationship. And the homosexual prostitute has become a fixture on the downtown streets at night, on street corners, at subway exits. These young men signal their availability for pay. But there are tens of thousands of homosexuals who deplore the tawdry image of the so-called gay life. Architects and lawyers, doctors, teachers, businessmen, men like these, who lead quiet, unexceptionable lives in towns and cities all across the country, much like their heterosexual neighbors. There is just one thing they are said to share with their homosexual brothers.
Homosexuality is, in fact, a mental illness which has reached epidemiological proportions. In 1948, Kinsey said that approximately 28% of adult males have had, at one time or another, 1 or more homosexual contacts.
Dr. Charles Socarides is a New York psychoanalyst, a clinical assistant professor of psychiatry at the Albert Einstein School of Medicine, here lecturing to a group of resident psychiatrists on homosexuality. They are taught that no man is born homosexual, that it is not genetic in origin, not the result of a hormone imbalance. Rather, they are told that sexual behavior is learned behavior. And many psychiatrists now believe that homosexuality begins to form in the first 3 years of life, the result of early childhood experience.
I was wondering if you think that there are any, quotes, happy homosexuals for whom homosexuality would be, in a way, their best adjustment to life.
The fact that somebody is homosexual, a true obligatory homosexual, automatically rules out the possibility that he will remain happy for long, in my opinion. The stresses and strains the psychic apparatus is subjected to over the years will cause him, in time, I think, to have increasing difficulties. I think the whole idea of saying the happy homosexual is to, again, to create a mythology about the nature of homosexuality.
What is it that drives a man into a homosexual relationship?
The aim of the homosexual act, paradoxically enough, is to seek masculinity. And that, in essence, the homosexual, in having homosexual contacts, is really achieving masculinity through identification with his partner. One thinks ordinarily that he is becoming feminine, but in fact, he is attempting to achieve the very thing that he felt he was so lacking in childhood.
What about the problem of latent homosexuality?
Simply because a person has a homosexual wish does not make him a homosexual, or has a homosexual impulse, or wonders what it would be like to have homosexual relations. And it's what we do that counts. The implication, you see, that is commonly tossed about, that all of us contain a so-called latent homosexual component, is completely untrue.
I wonder if you think that there's any time in life when a non-homosexual person is particularly vulnerable to seduction by a homosexual.
First of all, one cannot be seduced into becoming a homosexual. One develops homosexuality as a result of early childhood fears that we have mentioned before. Certainly, there are individuals, however, with a weakened sexual organization who are barely functioning heterosexually and who may have strong desires for a homosexual partner. And it is those individuals who, when they're seduced, can become homosexual.
It should be pointed out that Dr. Socarides' views are not universally held. There is a smaller group who do not consider homosexuality an illness at all. Instead, they regard it as a deviation within the range of normalcy. But the thrust of diagnosis and treatment in recent years has been mainly along the lines that Socarides details. And although the prognosis for cure is uncertain, some studies indicate that as many as 1/3 of those who seek help eventually become heterosexual. 4 years ago, the results of a 9-year research project of the Society of Medical Psychoanalysts were published. Chairman of the study, Dr. Irving Bieber, professor of clinical psychiatry at New York Medical College. Dr. Bieber speaks about the roots of homosexuality.
The fundamental framework is forged within the family setting between the parent-child relationship. A typical mother, that falls in this group, is a mother who establishes an over-close relationship with this son. She is generally overprotective, over-fearful of his getting into injury, tends to play her part in isolating him from the peer group in the sense of these boys are not gentlemanly enough, they're not refined enough, they're roughnecks, and she tends to discourage subtly his participation in rough and tumble activity. She's over close, over intimate,